Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. So today I thought what we do is we start some of those animal portraiture series that challenges that we talked about. I still have a couple of landscapes that I want to do with you and another western and all that. So many things to paint. But anyway, so what I have here is one that I've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. I've had it all set out aside and I wanted to do it, but I want to do it more as a beginning lesson. So I'm going to move a little slower for some of you that want to try this for the very first time. And let me just say this, okay? And I know I have a lot of floral painters that follow us here on the channel, and I love them as well, okay? But if you really want to understand the flow of petals and stuff to the flowers and change your look, it is really good for you to paint, especially a dog, or here we're going to be painting a Great Plains wolf, which is a variety of the gray wolf. It is so good because it teaches you about flow. Remember what I'm always talking about, petals and movement within the flowers and stuff. That I was really able to see when I started painting animals, and especially fur, and getting the fur to flow the correct ways. So it really does help a lot, and so you should try some. So what I have here, this is a Great Plains wolf. I got the photo from Adobe stock. I took it up and I just printed it out on my printer in 4 pages and then taped it all together. And then I have it over here on a 16 by 20 1/4 inch wood panel that I gave one real heavy coat of the canvas prep medium to, and then sanded it lightly. I left some of the brush marks and a little bit of texturing out here, so it's going to pick up some different looks with the brush as I use it, okay? Now, starting out as a beginner, what are some of the things that you do when you're going to put your pattern and stuff like that on? Or you get your drawing. And I'm a big advocate for drawing, but not as a beginner. Beginners, I have taught for over 40 years my beginners to transfer a pattern and start to study the color, the technique, and the drawing. Those are all elements of the design that you work on as you work, as you paint, basically, okay? So what I have over here, if you look at this one, it's right back there. This is where I took the photo that I purchased from Adobe. I put it into Adobe Photoshop, and there's all kinds of videos on YouTube and stuff that show you how to do that. And what it does is it takes the color photo and puts it out basically almost as a line drawing in the black and white that you can see. Now, I love to do that because what it does with the black and white, it points out where the most important elements are and things that I have to concentrate. So when you look at the color photo, sometimes you can't see all the details that are in here, into his muzzle, into this side of the nose, because we're into a cool color shadow plane in here. But when you take it up there onto that one, you can see all of those details, where the deepest parts of the shadows are. And what I look at that is, when you step back, you can see the importance of those eyes. From here, stepping back 8 feet away, you look at that, you can see the important elements from that painting. The eyes, the nose, the mouth. Those are landmark features that are going to make the actual animal portrait we're going to paint here. But you can see them really clearly, and sometimes you can't see that. When you're a beginner, you can't see that inside that color image. So it's good to look at it in black and white. So I always recommend beginners and stuff to learn how to see. I run an entire online course. It's called The Art of Seeing. I believe anybody can paint as long as you can see it. That's the most important part. And so how do you go about teaching your eye how to see certain elements? That's one way right there. You're looking at that one and you're seeing what it is that makes the important elements of this particular painting. So we're going to talk about that as we get going. The next thing I do, so I print them up to the same size so I can look, and I place it just like I did with some of the other animal portraits that I have here. I place it at the same height, so all I have to do is look back and forth through here. There are certain things in here that I'm going to change on the wolf, that I'm going to make him more of a portraiture and stuff like that. Now, Also, for you very beginners, this is what I recommend you do. You've seen me do this before, is you put out that clear plastic, and what you do is you just lay it over that other, that black and white that you have there, and you take off a traceable of it with the ink, or with the pen, with the permanent marking pen. And then as you're painting, what's going to happen, like I showed you before, as you're painting, if anything comes off, I showed you this on the last Western, if anything comes off, you'll be able to lay this plastic over it and look at it and see where the problem is. See, the thing is, learning how to see is going to come with doing paintings, but we want to make nice paintings as we're learning, okay? And one of the things is to teach you how to see, you got to know where there's a problem, and then you need to be able to find that answer. And using a clear piece of plastic can sometimes answer that really quick, and it reduces the frustration when you go, oh, okay, I have his nose too long, or I have his ear too high, or something like that. So you can use that plastic to help see it, because your eye won't always see it. So make yourself, you beginners, make yourself a good plastic copy like this, keep it around, and and you can use, this is transfer paper. Don't use carbon paper, use transfer paper. This is artist transfer paper that you put underneath the plastic, and you just take off and transfer your line. So then you have the line image. Now, what's going to be most important is, as I paint this, I'm going to be changing them, because that's one of the things I'll do. And I'll try to stay as close as possible to the line image here, so the beginners can follow right along. And that's all you're going to do, is you follow right along. You know, it's like I explained to a lot of my students, you know, when you're learning how to paint. For years, I used to teach beginners, intermediate, and advanced, but then what are those levels? You don't always have a real good idea about what those levels are. So now what I do is I just take it a little slower, and we work through all the things. And as a beginner, it takes you several paintings to start to hear it, or watch it over and over and over again, the video over and over and over again, to hear it, to start putting it into here, to start building your library of techniques and stuff that you need to, you know, to paint elements. Okay, let's get going. So my colors, these are the colors that I actually used on the last rose, the last video that I uploaded. I just wiped off my palette here, and I added to it out here. I got rid of the gold that I used, and I put out some gray, and this is medium gray value 6, and I put out some medium beige out here. Same colors. I will list the colors like I do in the videos. I'll list the colors over in the video description, so just look down below for the video description. You got it. I'm going to take a 2-inch wide brush. I'm going to take some of that gray and that beige. Now I like to mix these, not mix it up real well, but I love this with water. These colors, because they're going to make a real nice warm kind of a gray that we'll use as a base for our painting here. And so I'm going to want some areas, like I see a lot of warmth in there, so let's just put out some cooler gray here as well. And so I want to, I'm going to cover everything. I don't want too many brush marks, because we can add to this. But I'm just going to use some water so it dries pretty quickly. Try not to pull too many times through it, because you'll blend it a little too much. I want some of this movement into the background. That's what's going to make it really nice here, okay, is this movement here. And you know, you might take even like a warm streak. He's going to have these warm colors down through here. So you might want a nice warmth to show up. We'll probably put some darks over here, but let's take a little more beige and just pull that across and hit that warmth right in there. But then we'll leave this interest, maybe come out a little bit over here or so. So, you know, working the background color. So here I got a warm and I got a cool. The light's going to come in from this direction here. And so in actuality, these will be a little bit lighter back here. As you see back here, it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more shadow over there. Light side and shadow side here. And but having a little bit of warmth over here as we develop those shadows, that will, you know, that will create this kind of underglow, which I like to put in a lot of portrait paintings and stuff that I do. So you'll see me sometimes on shadow sides, rather than keeping everything cool, I'll put a warm down first and then a cool back up on top, and it gives you just a little bit more power. Now, you can take just a damp paper towel and you can pull off. Now, I wouldn't pull off too much because this is good undertone color for him as well. So but you can just pull off a little in case, so that you can clearly see your marks and what you're going to do here on him, okay? And you can take, I'm going to leave that, but if you get too much of this off, you can, just wipe it off, wipe your palette down and take off some of that extra. Now, there's a lot of different ways, and I show you especially in the S202, the Art of Seeing class, I show you all different kinds of ways to start out these types of paintings, okay? We have lots of different types of techniques. You can use a regular alla prima and a premier coup. You can use that bestry that I've really been using lately quite a bit. I'm going to start this out a little bit more Premier Coup on him. I'm going to start with some really darks, because when I look at his photo back there, I really see like his eyes and some of those main elements. So I want to put those in. I call them landmarks. I want to put those landmarks in first. And we don't have to have them perfect, but I want to put some of those in and get some of those darks and get some of those started. He's really warm back up there in some of those colors, really burnt sienna. You get a really nice dark like we have done before with the burnt sienna. And this isn't as dark as we're going to go, but burnt sienna with a little bit of the phthalo blue. Leave some of that burnt sienna showing though. When you're going to start something like this, you're going to go dark, but you're not going to go to the darkest that you can make. You always want to, I always say, leave yourself a couple values. You have your value scale here. So I'm going to be making up and around a 3 or so. So I can go darker if I need to. And I'm just going to come in. And this is just a small flat. This is just what is this one? A 6. And you could use a 4 or a 6 flat. And what we're going to do is put a little bit, and you can see it's slightly warm dark. And we're going to build up where I see some of those darks, and look over there to that black and white. And where I see some of those darks in and around that eye, we're going to put some of these areas in and build up the look of his eye and stuff here to start out with. That is, and so this is going to start basically his landmarks of his face and stuff here. So I'm going to start there. Then I look over at that one. See, in here I can't really see the difference, but I look over at that other one that you see over there. You can see the definition inside the nose. So what I'll do with those of you that don't have Photoshop or don't know how to use that, I'll put that black and white that's over there, I'll add that into the membership area of the channel here, so you can download that and take a look at that as well. But we'll start right in there. Those are real dark areas, okay? And these areas are gonna go darker. These are just, and I'm gonna start a bit of his right along his mouth here as that goes back, and but so you're going to start to see a little bit of this real dark areas on him, a little bit warmer. So I'll slide back and forth, sometimes a little warmer, and we're going to go darker yet, but we'll come right into here, into his ear. You can really see that burnt sienna coming through here now in that, and we'll just drop a bit of that up here. See where my hand is on my brush? This keeps the tip really light, and I just almost do a sketching with it. When I'm using this type of technique and I'm starting out like this, I like to do almost like a little sketching. I just added just a touch of extender to that, just so the paint slides a bit. That's what I'm looking for. We'll just put a whisper of this over here. A darker tip out here onto this defining line of his ear there. We'll push a bit of that right into here. I'm going to paint this really casual out through here, but we'll just start to find some of the areas here with the darks, and let's take a bit of that. It's going to come right up underneath here, and I'm just sketching. I'm just doing a real light. This does a couple things here too for me. This loosens me up and gets me moving the brush in all different kinds of ways. Helps me, analyze some of the darks, but it loosens me up and gets me into a little bit more of a sketching feeling, and I just love doing it like this. I'm gonna put that front. So what I'll do is I'll just thin this out with a bit of extender so it's not quite as powerful here. And I'm just going to pull down. And one of the things that will teach you why I like animals is it's going to teach you the planes. And so you kind of follow the fur to see what the stroke direction. And here I get this feeling of downplaying. And I get a feeling that it's a lot cooler than what the tone is that I'm using here, but that's okay. I'll change that. That we can change. But I want to do this little bit of this undertoning here first. So let's take a real thin bit of this as well. Sometimes I like that burnt sienna. If I want to gray it a little bit, I add just a touch of the sapphire. The sapphire, see how that grays that? It makes a softer gray, and it takes away a bit of the warmth. Won't take away all of it, but it takes away a bit of it. And we can use that like right up over here to start some of the shadow that's going to be on this side of his face up here. We're going to have some turning fur this way. But you can start to see a little bit of the light and the dark that's on him. And you can see that tone is it's a very good tone for underneath. So we might want to put a bit of that. Now, look at his fur that's right up there. You can see the direction. So what I'm doing is I'm going to just kind of move this and follow this coming around. And sometimes I'll push it with my fingers. Thank goodness it's all non-toxic acrylic. So I'll push this up and around and down here. And we could go a touch darker. We could even hit that burnt sienna with a little bit of the other blue here and push in just a touch of the darker. Still warm, because we can cool it off really easy here. Put in that dividing line down his face there. A bit of that up over here, a bit of that. We'll put lots of tones in, but this just starts you're starting this, what you're doing as an artist is you're starting in the sketch and starting to get a little bit of an idea how you're going to paint him. Let's just lighten some of this up a bit for a second and just drop some of that right into here. And that's going to be the direction and stuff of which we use that. And see, if I come back a second time, let that soak in just a second, you can actually make it a little darker here. And so I'll push just a bit of it here. So what I really want to do is create, and I love how the portrait painter, who I really enjoy watching, I have all of his videos, I watch it all the time, John Howard Sandon. And he always calls this, when you start to set this up, and I love what he calls it. He calls it a mosaic of tones. You're starting to put in a mosaic of tones. And that's what I'll do, is I'm going to start putting in this mosaic. Now, a lot of times you see me, when I do this, just jumping right in with a 3/4 inch brush and doing it. Here I'm just going to start out with a number 6 here and get this real sketchy look to it, mostly because his face is modeled with a whole bunch of smaller tones. And so this is it's a little more work, but it's going to allow me to get a lot of brush calligraphy in here and a lot of beautiful tone work in through here. So see, I see this soft tone coming down through here. It gets a little lighter right in there. So we'll just move that. What direction do you see that moving? And you can make mistakes too, guys. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. So I'm just going to get that a little darker to a little lighter right in there, right now. Okay. We have that dark. Let's come out of that. So just a little bit of this gray, some burnt sienna, a little bit of that sapphire really helps gray up that burnt sienna. Makes a beautiful tone. As a matter of fact, it makes the tone that you see right on him here. Let's just sketch some of that in here. Real model. See, I just push this around And I kind of let the color almost start to dry, and you get these real draggy marks. So here in here, the fur is all jumbled up and stuff, which is really great. And so we'll just emulate that. But down in here, we're going to get some nice directional strokes later on. So we'll be a little more careful right in here, setting some of that down. So that's right in underneath his neck area there. And so I'm just thinning this with a little bit of extender, so not to keep it wet. This is not to keep it wet. This is just so it moves for me really easy. It's real sketching kind of thing. And I'll just take a bit of that. Let's go right up. Let's lighten that up. We'll even take some of that background right over here, which is real close to the wolf as well. And we'll just push in for right now some of this right up over there. So what you're going to catch when you get here, we get all this modeling here, and what you're seeing is this light and dark areas that we're going to be working on him quite a bit. And I can push some of this in as softer, little lighter tones coming out of the deeper shadow areas. We call this, so you can see that deeper shadow area, and then you come out a little bit, pull up and down. But there'll be some lighter tone up on top of it, but underneath, that's what you look for. And this is called a transitional. And if you're painting Premier Coup like Sienna and stuff, it's called a transitional halftone. It's a tone that sits. It's a tone that sits. Here's the dark, here's the light. A halftone would sit right in between them and be halfway on the scale. That's what it means. That's what a transitional tone would mean, okay? So let's say I identify, if I come up here to my scale, let's say I identify, the light value on that wolf right in there is a 9. The shadow color right into that area down there is a 3. So my tone would be halfway between my 9 and my 3, which would be right around a 6. And that's kind of what the value it is of what it is I'm using right there is a 6, see? So that's about the value I'm using. It's darker than the 8, it's lighter than the 3, so it's a 6 that I'm using, which makes it a nice half tone. It's halfway between the lightest color and the darkest color. And so if I come in here, and I'm going to come in here later on, and I put a 9 up here, then I want to make a transitional between my 9 and my 6, so I'm right here and here. It's going to be about 7.5. Or so, somewhere right in there. You divide it in half each time, then that's how you start to slowly paint it and start to build it in. But you'll use that to help you get other tones. And so here, I'm going to, before I go in with some of these other gray tones here, I'm getting an idea of where my light is going to be, where some of my other tones are going to be, where my shadows are going to be. But I'm not completely, I'm going to put a little bit more gray right up here. Okay. And we're going to have some gray right up here. Let's just get a bit of that in. We're going to be going back and revisiting all of these areas several times. And that's what's going to make him look wonderful as we get these tones in here. Now, so what I want to do is, before I get too far here, is I want to get some of these really warm, kind of yellowish tones in here. And that is going to be yellow oxide and burnt sienna. Those are going to be beautiful, beautiful tones here. More yellow oxide than burnt sienna. Let's put that warmth in, and let's see. See, and that's just right about what you see there, see? So I'll look where that is, and I'm going to put a bit of that warmth in, right where I'm seeing, right up there by the point of his ear. Some of it moves in there. Down here on this side over here, see how this is lighter? Of course, it's on the light side than it is over here. It's a little bit more sienna. And so we'll just reach over here, grab a bit more sienna, and let's just drop some of that right in there, see? Right in there. So now you pick up that warmer color here that has that yellow oxide, more yellow oxide into it. As I'm coming into the shadow tones, my shadowy tones will contain actually more burnt sienna, the darker of the tones here. But let's come back in. Now some of this in through here is a little softer. Not that if you look real close, that's a little brighter than that is a little grayer. So you might even just add a bit of gray right into some of this yellow. And just for right now, let's drop some of that right down into these areas that we see. It don't need to be perfect. We're just pushing in some tone, some color, and I always call it a modulation of the color. It is a mosaic of tones. We're just kind of pushing in some of those colors that we see, you know, up into that area there. Like I see a little bit more of that gray right back up in here. Has just a touch of that yellow in it. That's actually a real pretty color. The dirty yellow from my brush with some of that gray. You can see that right here. You can see some of that. It's a beautiful color right down in there. Where do you see it? Go through, plop it in where you see it. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just our first look. Where do you see some of that warmth? Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's go just a touch more sienna. Touch more sienna, maybe just a touch grayer here. Right up in here. That's pretty darn close to it. So I use the sapphire. If I don't see it as bright as a burnt sienna, I'll add the sapphire to it, which gives you a good gray. If I really want it to gray and darken, then I'll add the blue. So it's color theory, right? It's color theory. So what is burnt sienna? It's really a toned orange. And so I add any blues to it. It's a complement of orange is blue. Any blues to it is going to gray it down, take it to the center of our color wheel. And so it's also going to tone it down. But if I add, so if I take a burnt sienna here, if I add the darker blue, this will give me my shadows and my darks. That's just a touch too much. That phthalo is really powerful. My shadows and my darks here, and it really starts to cool it down quite a bit. If I take the burnt sienna and I add the sapphire, I will get a lighter grayed version of it, slightly lighter and grayer. And so you use these for those halftone areas. You use this into your shadow tone areas. And then as we get warmer and warmer, we'll add yellows to this, and then maybe some medium whites to this. This is going to be your wolf right into, and at any time you can increase that gray by adding the sapphire to it, tiny touch of the sapphire, which makes more of a gray. And that's basically how we're going to work the wolf here and get a lot of these tones, subtle little tones and variations of that. So I can take any kind of combination of some of these and start to build other smaller strokes of other tones. So this is what you'll be getting, see, is this, and you start to look through, see, that's a beautiful tone that I see right over there on this part of his eye. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. I see it come out of there, just a touch more yellow right there, so I'll just put a little mark of that right there. So it goes slightly darker and there. Then it will, and I haven't really done it yet, but we might as well start some right now. It'll start to warm up, and that's where it's going to come in, maybe a little bit of the medium white right in there as it starts to warm up and lighten up. That's just our first look at it. Okay. So right back in here, I'm going to take this warmer yellow, maybe put a bit of that right above his eye. It comes down with just a small touch right above that area there. Maybe a bit lighter right in there with some medium white just right in there. And remember, I'm not as light. I don't put on, I always take a, so if this is the color, and let me just show you. So that's the color I'm using, and I'm using it here. You can see it's a bit, it's not as light. I don't want to use as light. I always want to leave myself a couple values lighter and a couple values darker as I start to block this all in, okay? So I want to go leave a little bit lighter and a little bit darker. But we can take some of that medium white, maybe some of these little grays, and we can start some of that right in here. Let's even grab some of this other gray, their medium gray, which is a value 6 gray, which is perfect. So, you know, that's why it's called, it is right here, it's called a medium gray, value 6, okay? And so it's a good one in here for half toning and putting some of that in. See, that's a beautiful gray. That's going to go into here. And we can start to just put in some of that tone right in there as we start to find him. here, and it's warmer here, it's warmer all through here, whiter right there. So that warmer is going to be more towards the medium white. We'll end up with more medium white through all of this right now. Which direction do you see those things pulling? Look at the direction of his hair and just put in a few marks. Some long, some short. You can see some of that gray right up here. Not quite as light right there, okay? You can see it slightly darker gray right down here on his lower lip. Here has a bit of yellows and stuff right in here, just a bit. Here we'll just add a touch of that in there. It could get actually a touch dark, so we put a bit more blue into this. Right up in here we could darken that just a touch more to work that tone. Here, do you see? And so it's you're grabbing an impression of it, not a perfect one yet. Because as you get going, see, this is what happens. Okay, I'm going to start painting him here. And this is really important. Okay, frustration happens when you jump too far forward too fast. And so what I'm going to do is paint him a little bit slower, and what it's doing is my eye is starting to get fine-tuned to these tones. And by the end of the painting, you're going to be able to see subtle little variations that you couldn't see earlier on in the painting, because your eye becomes more adjusted to the tones and it starts to see them. That's part of the art of seeing. Let's take this grayer color here. Let's put it right out here. Leave just a little bit of a space for the marks of the nose that we know are going to be there. There'll be a little bit more of a gray, and I'll put it in right on the top of his nose here. I'll put it in right now, but it's not exactly correct. It's got to be a little bit more gray, a little bit cooler. But you can see, so when you look at that, you can see there's the gray, there's going to be a half tone, and there's going to be a darker tone right in there. I might just go ahead and put that little bit of darker tone. To really get that nice dark tone, you take a little bit of violet and green into that, and into that blue. And this violet is a little bit, it's been out several days, so a little bit hard there on the top, but we can push a bit darker. So this is one of the darker tones in. This is about a value 2. This isn't as dark as I can make it, but it's getting there. And so I'm just going to put a little bit on there right now where I see it. And you're going to get lost into where you see it if you constantly look over at the color photo. So what you need to do is look over at the black and white there, and really where do you see the darkest of those colors. And that's where we can come in and add just a touch of that. So you can see that really starts to change his whole shape and stuff there of his face. And we could take just a whisper of that, down there on his face. Let's put a touch of that right into the pupil of his eye here. Okay, and right back up over here too on this side. And again, you can hardly see the pupil of his eye on the color photo, but you can really see it over on the black and white over there. And we can take just a touch. Let's just go ahead and touch a little bit of this around. Touch a little bit of that around in there. And a little bit of that around right in there. Maybe a small little mark of it right in there. And see, I try to use, when I'm touching there, if you notice, I'm using different corners and edges of the brush. And so what I'm trying to do is create a different mark than what I did when I first put it on. So I don't go over the same mark with the same amount. I leave a little bit of that first one through. And so what I'm doing is just adjusting the mark, a smaller mark of dark right in there. Now let's go ahead and add this. We have to decide on how glowy we want to make his eyes. On one of the earlier wolves that I painted, I made his eyes a little bit more glow. And the glow is really going to come from the Diarylide Yellow. But I'm gonna start this out, Diarylide Yellow and a little bit of yellow oxide, a little softer, and this will glow a little bit more than what actually is on him, and then I'll push it into position here. But I don't want to completely take away all of his glow and push that into position until I have just a little bit more going on with the colors. But if that bothers you too much, you can take a bit of your warm color here, thin it out, maybe a bit of extender, or you could use the open medium. This is that Daravan open medium that I use all the time. You guys see me use it. I have it right here, the Daravan open medium. And it works with the Heritage paints really, really well because Daravan makes the Heritage paints for us. So, and I can just touch a little bit of that over these sides here. I don't want to take away all the glow, but touch that over those sides and push it back down a little closer. It's still glowing more than what it is on the other one, but I'm not done yet. But I can take some of that glowy little yellow, and this is what I like to do. I always like to, so it doesn't just isolate in one area. I'll come out to some of the more yellow areas that I see and just touch it around a little bit so that that color carries, that tone carries. You pick it up in just a few other little areas there. And it will help quite a bit in carrying the tones or carrying the look through him. Okay? All right. So that's got some of that on him. Now I'm going to, we've got a long way to go on him in building those tones, but I'm going to step up to a little bit bigger brush here and just do what I call just push in some of the other major tones that I see. Some light, some brown, a little bit of burnt sienna here, some yellow here. And so I'm going to be looking for a tone right down in here. A little more burnt sienna, a little bit of blue right down in here. Let's get a bit more blue into that. So we get that just a bit grayer. Let's put some warmth on some yellow. So don't mix it up real well. And yeah, could have a touch of green in there as well. Let's try that. Too much green there. I just wanted to show you what not to do. But we'll push in just a bit of that here. And real quick with the bigger brush here, I'm going to leave some of this other undertoning, or this other tone color that I used, just because it is burnt sienna and green's really pretty, but that other tone is close and doesn't have to be perfect right yet. We're just getting some close colors. That burnt sienna and green's real pretty. That's that tone that's right down in there on him. And so it's just to just vary that green. It was actually a little bit more green than what you think. And we'll use that right down there. Let that climb up right up in here a bit. We'll let his arm and stuff fade away there. Few little marks of that. Just follow here some of the movement, where you see the movement on him, which way the fur is going here. And just quickly, with your brush, and we'll just lightly push that in there. Here. There, like that. And maybe a touch of blue in there, slightly different. I like that blue. That blue came out really nice. So that's something I'm going to have to remember. Now we could head up more towards that half tone, which is that burnt sienna and the blue. That's your half tone here. Right up into this area and hit just a bit more. Needs a bit more blue here. Yep. That's just that pretty tone that's happening right in there. Many variations of it though. Get that in. Now, so that is a mid-tone. That is a half tone. We could, And there's a lot of light back up in there. We've suppressed some of the light, so we could take some of this warmer medium white, some of the green, a little bit of that blue, and just lightly, for right now, this is just for our own look, we can push some of that back in. That's going to be that softness and stuff in there. You can see it's going to go a lot lighter. But this is actually, and I always tell my beginners, this is a good place to get in before we come in and start working the fur, to learn and practice some of the fur out here that doesn't make a difference. And see how I get this kind of a look here? That is it's a up and down, and it's a soft pressure. So first it's a push and then a light pressure. So I push it to push on the paint there, and then it's a light pressure to soften that movement out. And so I push it to put it on, then light pressure. Sometimes I'll turn the brush to get different angles. And this is a good place for you to practice some of this movement. This is all going to change, but it's a real good place to practice some of this movement right now, to get some of this down before we move on to other areas here on the wolf here. So we'll push in a bit there. We have these light colors that we want to push in there, but that's pretty good right now. Just get some of those tones, right like that. And just a mark or two, just to get some of that tone. We're putting up this mosaic of tones on him. That's what we want to build, okay? And that big brush is just great for doing that. And, you know, change your brush quite a bit. So that was a 6 I was using, then a 3/4 inch and stuff. And now I'm going to go right up here. This is my 10. This is one of my favorite painting brushes, especially when I'm going to do fur, because I like the width of the stroke, but then I like to also use the chisel, so it gives me some different sizes. And before I come back through and, you know, work his tones again, I'm going to put in some of the light areas, and not completely as light, maybe a value or so short, but I'll take some medium white and some white, maybe a bit of my grays here, to always dirty up that white, so it's not a pure white. Sometimes it leans slightly green, slightly blue, slightly sienna here. And white is very dangerous. I don't like to paint with it until the very end of the painting here. So I'm modeling it up with all different kinds of colors here. And so you can see it's like a medium white. It's just so here's my value of my medium white. I'm almost the value of medium white. I'm like a 7 to an 8. So we don't want to go up to a 10. It's not white. You don't want to paint with white. White will kill your painting too quickly. Let's put in a couple of things that we really see. So we can see his cheekbone, and it comes here. And then you can see this coming out that's actually kind of following the neck. So the neck fur is going to come down around like this. And so what I'll do is just stroke that a bit, and I'll use my finger, or you can just wipe your brush with a paper towel and continue to use your brush with less paint to just start some of that motion. And what we're going to do later on, let me just show you, is we're going to push this back and forth with light and dark. So we'll take some of this gray, this beautiful gray we have here, and we'll push this back and forth after we get these tones in. So we'll push the gray to one side, we'll come back with the light and push the light into it, right like here, working smaller areas at a time, but that's what's going to give us this beautiful look of the fur. But what we're going to do is create ourselves a tonal map of that area so we know what colors we're using what and where. That's the first ticket. So right into here, we'll grab some of this color, change the tone. Let's grab a little bit of gray, push that in. Grab it just a bit darker right out over here. Push that in here. There, like that. Okay. What do you see going on in here? Maybe a touch of the yellows and siennas right in there. Maybe a touch of those. Boom, boom, boom. Move your brush. Just move your brush, and kind of sketchy. There was one animal portrait painter that I really loved, and he always said, don't let your brush lose contact with the surface as you're sketching. I was like, what? And it was like this. he'd touch it down, lift the pressure back and forth. Don't let it lose contact with it. And so he's like, oh, how do you get this? Light pressure. And so what that does is it teaches you to use your brush all different kinds of ways here. And so it was like, how do you paint something and don't let the brush lose contact? So what it does is if you want to create a lighter, softer area, you have to use less pressure. And it teaches you how to use less pressure. It really does work. It's really quite nice. So here we got a little bit of that dark. Let's just go back and push some of that in. And a little different than what I've done before here. Okay. Grab some of that. Let's grab some of this lighter little look right in here. Boom, push that. And see, I'll lift that pressure so that I don't destroy everything I've done before. There's little bits there. A little light yellowy bit right there. We'll come in and specifically paint that eye in just a bit. But let's go back to a little warmer medium white right down. Let's set that top of that cheekbone in right there. And see, I've got it a little rough right there, which is a good. There's some that would leave it. I will sometimes just take my finger and push like this. And because I've got wet edges all the way around, it's wet into this gray, it's wet over here, I'll push those together in there like that. And then I'll come back and make another mark or so that I want using different parts of the brush here to create those tones. And there, let's build that light right up here as well. Bit of that light. And pull that down. Right off of there. There's a not quite as light, maybe a little bit of gray into it. It's not getting you look. See, it's not quite as light as it is right there. Do you see that? That's what your eye starts at. And at first, it's hard to see that. But now as I'm working more and more tones, I start to see more and more subtle differences between the two. That one is just a bit lighter than the other one is here. And those are what's really going to help you capture your image of your wolf here, is being able to see those tones. Let's get just a bit more of that gray right around there. Okay. Some of that pulled down here. If you find the 10 too big for what you want to do, then small down your brush here. But try to use a different one than the 6 we used earlier here. Let's put a bit of that gray right down here. And zoom right in there. Okay, building him up here. Building this ear up here. Here, that little bit of tone, just a bit warmer right here. Boom, right in there like that. So you can see this real nice mosaic. So here, a little bit darker right up there. Do you see that? So it's a little bit darker. So add just a touch, either some extender or some open medium to it, thin it out just a bit. Let's just put a whisper of that right up there. A little darker up on the tip of that ear here as well. We didn't add that earlier, so let's get that in there. Even a little darker yet. Your dark is your burnt sienna and blue. Your real dark is your burnt sienna, blue, some red violet, and some green. Okay. Drop that right in here. That's just well, actually, that's really close to what he is, but it's just a bit fast. I like to do that in 2 stages rather than go that fast, but we'll leave it for right now. So I always leave myself some room to make it a little lighter and a little darker as I develop the design. I don't like to jump too far, too fast into the painting. And so we'll push a bit of that dark right in there. Right up there like that. And you start to look for other little places. Right up in here. A little bit just going to be back behind his nose. I'll push a bit more right there on that part of his face. Let's take some more of this right up underneath his chin and pull that out and down. Now look at the second time coming through here. Look at the beauty of that tone that's coming in there. And, you know, we can touch like a little bit more blue and just mark in a little bit more depth right in there like that, see? Maybe a quick little mark of that over here. So, you know, I take an area like this, boom, boom, and I like to really kind of loosen it up and do it kind of quick. And so I don't try to copy it. I try to capture the power or the impression of it. A little more burnt sienna, a little warmer over here. I just love painting with the 10. It's one of my favorite all-time sizes. Fits my hand really well, but like I say, you can always change it and adjust it to whatever you like. But so we'll see a bit of those marks right down in here. That's a bit heavy. I'll be softening that out a bit, but that's not bad. A bit of that mark right up here above the eye. Do you see a little mark of it right there? See? A little mark of it. It's a bit big on mine. Okay, but so we'll take it down just a touch, a little bit there. But now look at him, look at the tones that are going there into his face. And I also like to paint sometimes with just start adding that open medium that's going to slow down the drying time and really do this, makes the color slippery so it just slides over the surface really, really easy here. And I painted my picture there, so we'll push just a bit here, a bit of that pulling down there like that, so we get that now so you get those looks there in him. We could have, you know, there's subtle little half tones, maybe a touch more burnt sienna, warmer subtle little half tones in some of these other smaller areas. You can add them now, you can come back later and add them, you know, but you see little bits of that warmth and stuff, so we just want to make a quick note of some of that in those areas here. So I use extender if I want it thin and the colors just kind of slide over the surface, and I'll use open medium to really kind of make the colors slide. Okay. You can, but then they give the colors, and those of you that have both, you can feel the difference between the two. Really feel the difference, and you find that the feel that you like to that for your brush. Let's take a bit of light, just pull that down, and hit the edge of his nose there, and start to bring that forward just a touch. So just a touch of that light and that gray, we can just starts to bring that shape of his muzzle there forward. A bit more, you can see areas of a bit more dark in there. Bit more dark, bit more light. But he's starting to come there with that. That's working pretty good. I need to widen his head in here and get some more of these tones up over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a lower tone that I see here of a gray, which is really kind of a medium value 6-tone gray, which is, of course, our burnt sienna and that sapphire blue that's coming in there. That's a beautiful little gray. I'll start to tap, move my brush here like this. Okay, and you might want to, if you want time to work that, add some open medium That's going to keep it wet for you to work it a bit. But I'm more of an acrylic painter. I don't mind it drying on me and working the tones because I really like picking out the tones. But if you want to work it wet a little while longer, you get frustrated with it because it dries too fast or something, add some open medium. So there's that gray, those underlying grays, a little bit darker right in there. So I could take just a hint of that blue burnt sienna. Let's put just a touch of open medium in that and hint that darker, warmer color right in there as well. Boom, there that is. Do I see any over there other than right here? Let's get that just a bit more blue. So the blue darkens it and cools it a little bit. Takes away some of that warmth of the burnt sienna. And violet and green will do the same. Let's hit that just a bit darker. So it's a slow progression. So we came through, and then now we're going slightly darker, and then we're going to go slightly lighter. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back up to some of my green, blue, grays here. Blue, grays, some of that medium white, maybe a bit of that gray. Here, I'm just going to tap it into my brush like this. The paint's kind of thick. It's not thin. It's kind of thick. So I want it to drag over the surface just a bit here like this. So the paint's almost dry. And I'm just going to drag this over the surface like this in the direction that I see his fur going. Here like that. And there'll be some longer ones right down here. Longer ones, and I'll push back a bit to soften some of that or incorporate it, make it look like the fur here. So if you want the paint not to blend together and stuff, you use the paint a little thicker, okay, and use the brush very flat, and see you get these marks like this that look like fur. That's what the fusion brush does. Not all brushes do that. The Fusion does it. We designed it to do this. Works really, really well for this here in working that. So you can use it for some of these. Now that's not as light as I'm going to go, but it allows me to start some of this look of the fur here, like that, right up there. And let's darken this down just a bit right up here. Right up there like that. And I'll look through the painting for some of this kind of gray, mottled gray that I see. It's a little darker over there, so I'll just touch in a little bit of dark. Don't mix it up too well, but I'll just touch in a little dark there. Always look through those values. What do you see into the values there? We have to get some of those shadows on him. Now, so I see that, and I can make those grays, and that's the one thing, you know, I used to always worry about, oh, I can't make that color again. I don't worry about that, making that color again. I know I can come back, but I want the next time I come back to use a color that's slightly different. So, but just like I said before, grab a little bit of that and move a few little marks of that throughout your painting to help carry just the impressions of some of those grays, just in a few areas here around him. And there we go. And now let's step up. So we went a little darker, back to that mid-tone, then we're going to go a little lighter now, and then step back to that mid-tone. Let's take a little gray, a little medium white. We'll lighten up with some white, warming it up a bit here. Not going to white. You can see I'm not to white. Here's my white. I'm not there. I'm a value or two, maybe 1.5 values lower than it. And let's push some of that light now back on him. There, right in there like that. And where are we going to see some of that light? A little bit of it right in there. Try to use a slightly different mark. You can even go down in brush size again, but try to use a little different kind of a mark. Maybe adjust it a little bit here, a little darker. Here. See, I'll use the chisel of my brush for some of these little marks here. And we'll grab just a bit of it. Some of that's a bit heavy. So I just lift some of that out. But I'll leave some of that little mark. Even though it's not exactly the same as him, it catches the feeling of him. We'll do some of this again. Pull that little thicker paint. Pull that in there. Okay. Let's grab some more light and we'll start to pull down and shape him up a bit more. Let some of this go right over those other lighter, those other tones here. This is going to really form the side of his muzzle. Now there's some gray. I kind of eliminated it too much here. So I'm going to back paint that gray tone back in there. And see, I'll go back and forth and lift it up in there, build that just a bit, and then I can come back and notice how I'm holding my brush a little different, so I don't get exactly the same mark as I just used here. And let's put some of that gray pulling down, which makes that socket of the eye right in there. So a lot of it is I look the way in which he is, some of these tones are stroked. And, look at that fur. For the way the fur is flowing, this one's pulling down. So I want to make sure I pull that mark down here. This one here is pulling slightly out like that. Here. That. A little bit of that light. Right up like that. We can hit some of that yellow. You don't have to, you could come back and add this yellow and stuff back in there later. I'm just going to work around this a bit. And so the tones here, like what I'm working on here, are almost dry. I'm so close to each other that they look like they're blending in, but they're not, as I'm building this on him here. But we got to get this muzzle area and stuff a little lighter, so you think I know what I'm doing here. Let's get a little more light. I'm going to add some open medium just because it makes it slippery, a little bit more transparent here as we work. We want to capture some of the feeling here. This has got to go around the edge of his mouth there. Look at how that is pulling here. Like that, building that on him. See, it just modeled, and I love that medium white, that gray, a little bit of white. Steps it up a bit. Here. There we go. Let's not take that light down in there. That would be wrong. But we can take a bit of it. That might be too light. We'll see. It'll dry down a value or so, so we might be safe here. Okay, so let's just pull that and see if we can leave that. We could also glaze that down just a bit there too. Let's put a bit more light right up here. There. Slightly more yellow. So I kind of look around, and I love when I'm painting, when I'm not teaching and I'm painting for myself, this is how I love to do it. Just kind of jumping around, picking the tones and where do I see this stuff. And he slowly comes to life here. That's what I like to do. And then as I start to refine the tones even more, I will go to a smaller brush and do smaller marks. Right now I'm still where I can capture that big look there. And we'll take a bit of that yellow, some of these other grays right in here. This area, this right around his eye is so important to setting the feeling of his eye and stuff. So I really want to capture that. You can see there's some warmer, like a real burnt sienna gray, and what it is that mid-tone burnt sienna and the blue, kind of warmer gray burnt sienna underneath there that I need to establish a bit more. There's one little bit of it. You can see it. Can you see it right into there? It has a slight yellowish cast to it too, so I might want to add just a touch of yellow and hit a few areas there. Then we'll go slightly darker back up and hit a few little marks of that. Push that in, right in there, before we come back and hit just a couple areas here of some lights in there as well to set some of that in. Now, I'm going to have to do that again, but that's closer. That is closer. We can set some. Now, when you're, there'll be some artists in there that will, come to this point, then they pick up the small brush and they start just doing little hairs of everything. And those are fine too. I mean, I did that for a while, but for me, I love the power of the brush stroke, the brush mark. I love what the brush mark does rather than doing a liner brush with a whole bunch of little hairs, which makes a fantastic painting. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic, but I love to figure out the tones and the strokes. To me, that's where the fun comes in. So, yeah, we'll figure that. And we'll work this. Let's work a bit more of the light. So that's going to pull down right in there. Boom, coming down. Several times, so I still get to go through again with some of this. Slightly different here. Push that in. A little bit of the grays. Just fun. To me, this is the fun, watching him just come to life with some of these colors, you see. And now that's a real pretty tone there. We'll touch that a little bit down there, a little bit back up in here maybe. So you see it start to refine him a bit. Some of that tone can come right up in here into his eye socket again to deepen that. Kind of away from that just a bit. And that corner of the eye, bring that down. Now this is all stuff, that you start looking at. It's as to where you might have come off or misshapen something or misread a tone a little bit. And just small little refining of it. But you see how his face now is starting to come farther and farther forward. I need to get that little bit darker color tone right back up in there, but I want to check that other, and we really want to make sure we get the shape of this. The nose to me is really something important on the animals, and so I really like to capture them quite well. I'm using a big brush, so I might have to go smaller here to really capture the correct shape and feel of that nose. There's that light that I still need to put up there. And this light, see, here's what's really interesting. And let's see. So we'll look at this one here, and you just see it dark, okay? But then you go over to that one right here. Matter of fact, let me bring this over, okay? So let me bring this over. And you look at that right here with this one, you can see there's a light right there, see, on the inner part of the nostril and hitting here and here. That the color photo does not show that light right there, see? But the Photoshop can pick it up. And so that's why I like to look at that big one there like that, because you can see it. You can see that light. And so I drop down here to my smaller brush. We'll make a bit of a lighter little gray color. We'll look over to that one and we'll push that little bit of gray. And that's, you know, this is what's really going to give him a lot more life. It's going to take him a little different than the color one. And that's a decision right now that you as the artist have to make, is that, you know, which version of him are you going to use? I like this light hitting here because I know that's what happens on an animal, on a dog. When I paint that light, I see that light like that. Take that down right there a bit. So I like that bit of light. And then there's that lighter that's going to color, that's going to hit right there. And it's going to go a little bit lighter here. So I'll make that lighter gray just a bit more. Look over at that color one, and you know, you'll see it bigger up on the other one where it travels across the front just a bit. It doesn't on that one. Let's gray it down just a bit softer. We'll push it right to the back here into the nose. And then one of the things I always do with the nose when I paint it is, and I do this with even in portraiture and stuff, is I go back and I read, now another gray here real quick, let me just take the side step. Really good gray is blue and red. That's more of a pure complement and makes it real deep gray as well. But I go back with the darks to draw, because I draw with, you see that nice dark, I can use the corner of this brush and shape up and draw a lot easier with the darks than I can with the lights. So I'll soften out just a bit of that line of that nose there. And I'm going to put in a bit of the darker part of the nostril right in here. I can still go a little bit darker, but that puts in, so you see there's a little bit more character to the nose in him there than it is on the other one. And because of that black and white that I like. I'm going to add a bit more dark right there. Maybe just a whisper mark of it right in there. So it gets just in its, so in the painting, this is why I like the painting. You can see that warm tone, the cool tone, everything that's happening right in there. You see it a little bit more on this one in the painting than you do in the photo. And that is, to me, is what brings the painting a lot more life, the more subtle changes of tone. We'll put a bit more of that dark right in there. Okay. And this is what this is how I start to build that. Let's take that dark. First time you've seen me rinse my brush here. So I usually don't. I'll put a little extender in that when I rinse it like that. And one of the reasons why I do is like, why do you put extender back into it? Because I just put a lot of water, and some of this out here I put open medium in, and see, it's wet. It's still wet. You can see I can touch. First you got to find a clean finger. Okay, my pinky's kind of clean, but you can see that from earlier there. See, it's still wet. That's still wet color. And so if I use water, I could pull through it and get a hole. So I take the water out of my brush with a little bit of extender. And that allows me to do this. And see, it doesn't create the holes. It'll allow me to create the fur look that I want right up there on top. So I take a bit more white and I'll build the color a bit more here. Okay, we'll come in here and tap this around. We still have to put in the idea of his whiskers and stuff. Here. But we'll pull a few little lines right over the edge of his mouth there. And you can see now, look at the area that's right in there. It's getting a lot of character to it, see? from working all of those tones, we're now getting some character. And I'll tap in here a little bit more texture now. It's thicker paint, see? I'll push in a little bit of texture into him here. And if I get too much texture there, I'll slide back to a slightly darker value and pull some of it off. Maybe sometimes I just like the dirty brush paint it for a little bit here. And I'll pull off some of that, tap around a bit, get some of that nice little interest right up in there, you know, that's just all good stuff there. Let's get down slightly darker, grayer, right down here, and put a softer little gray bit right in there. And again, this is where you start to say on your animal how much you're going to do, how much work you're going to, how many tones you're going to put in there. You know, I like those little bits of half tone and stuff in there. I want to get a yellow and a burnt sienna here, a little bit of blue, gray that a bit. Let's pull down here to that nose. Get that feeling of that down to that nose again. A little bit of lighter with just a touch of yellow. So I'll just take over here, lighten that up, touch of yellow, maybe a touch of medium white here. And we'll lighten and pull through some of that tone in there. What do you see in the tones? Let's go back to a bit of the gray. Right in there. And a bit of the light yellow, kind of yellowy kind of color. Yellowy kind of color. That's good color theory. Yellowish gray. How's that? Yellowish gray. Let's try that. Put a bit of medium white in there. Is a nice transition. Right in there. So you can see now I'll just take this, remember I said I'll take this, I'll start painting with the smaller brush and looking for smaller marks of tone, especially the ones that are going to shape his face a bit more. And I'll start looking for those, like you see that pull down light right there. And that's what I'm looking for, just a pull down light right there. And I might just leave that, you know. And different artists are going to do different things. Like you'll see some of the Art of Prima artists that just will just leave it, you know, that powerful. I'm going to add just a little bit of open medium, darken that just a touch. And let's reset that one. It could be just a half a tone lighter. Remember, it's going to dry slightly darker too. Used a little chisel to take it out a bit. That's pretty good. Bit of my dark. And again, if something dries up, I don't mind mixing it back and forth. I love to mix. I love to, but it's not really mix. I just kind of get the colors to where they just start to incorporate, you know, flowing together. You know, that's where I'll leave it. Here we go. That's kind of a real good one right there. Maybe a bit of that just pulling up and down there. There like that. That's pretty good. And so you see it just, he just starts to build. Let's build this top part of the eye a bit more. Small, get over onto the chisel. Let's build a little more medium white into that. There we go. And maybe some yellows onto the sides of him there. The sides of that, just little touches of that warmth. As it fork goes up into those grays there. And you know, the thing is, you'll drive yourself nuts. Now we're coming close to him. I haven't captured all his look yet. Most of it is in his eye, but and I don't drive myself crazy trying to, because you come to the point where you'll try to copy his expression exactly correct, and you can't always do that. Now we're going to get a lot closer here because of his eye. I know where it is, and it's in his eye. But when you're beginning, you don't always know that. I'm going to put a little bit of this light right down in through here too. Just a touch more of that. But you don't always know that, and it can get really frustrating as you try. But don't try to copy. If you're starting to get a good look, let it be your painting. Don't worry about that. You know, don't worry about capturing it absolutely perfect. Just start to find the colors. I'm just going to rinse that out a little bit. Now, the light part of his eye, I want you to see here, light part of his eye isn't more narrow than what it is over here. And that's one of the things that helps him build up his expression. So I have to make this a little bit bigger over here. So we're going to touch and lift off up and build that up, coming up into the center line of his face. There, a bit more. That's better. And I actually took out some of the shadows, so then I just come back down in and set some of it back in there, like that. And so I start to slowly, now that could have a touch more yellow over here on the other side, right across the width of his eye there. And this is what I do, back and forth, and build maybe just a touch of light into that here. And if I put on too much again, I take it back out. Go back and forth. At some point in time, you have to call it done, but we're not there yet that we have to do that. So, yeah, and that could be just a little wider stroke of light. Mark wider right in there. Let's get a bit more white and make the mark here. There, that's better. Let that fade there just a bit. But you can see how that starts to build up on him. Now, this, I'm going to go back. I'm going to set that brush down for just a minute. Matter of fact, if you're going to leave it for a while, just poke a little extender in it. And that'll keep it nice from drying here. I'll go back to my 10. I'm going to rinse that out, some of that blue out of there. Put some extender in it. Rid of that water. Let's go back to some medium white, touch of white, some of those grays. And let's go back and set that in again. Right in there. Pull that. Try to find the flow of his fur. That's what's going to give you the interest there. And so in finding that flow there, I kind of painted out this little bit of a shadow down that side of his eye. So I just go put it back in. And that was a mid-tone that looks like it could be a nice mid-tone shadow of gray and burnt sienna. So that could have just a touch more blue in it. Here. So I just go back and forth. And see, this is how you kind of do it on him. Back and forth there as you find his shapes. Here. Here we go. Find those shapes. Let's get a bit of even some of that gray in there. There we go. And see, then I can just take some of that light while that gray is just a little bit wet and just pull through and make a softer transition there if I want. And that's how I like to do it. Rather than keeping everything wet like with an oil, I like to work a small area and then come back and change it. And what's nice about that, and I know when you're first learning, that might be frustrating because you're like, oh, it dried on me. But no, if you go over a dry area, that gives you a beautiful look, a different look. An oil's always going to soften on you. And it's not that you can't do this with oil. You can paint this easily with oils. But I love the acrylic, and I use that back and forth. And so you see, I can come up here and just do a drag like this over this dry area and get a different type of mark that I could than if it was wet with oil. And so I can control that, the look of that, by whether or not I do it on a wet or a dry surface. I like that. Let's build up some more of that light, warm light here, and build up this part of his nose and muzzle here, right up here like this. Pull that down a bit. There we go. Capture that look. See, there's that light that kind of curves right through here. So to really kind of capture his expression, you know, with his eye, we have to really do, but we want to make sure we capture that big flowing down mark there, like that. Little softer grade yellow here, pulling down here like that. Right down in there like that. So we capture, so you see that pulling down there, this kind of curving that way just a bit. Do you see it? Okay. And if you don't see it yet, you will. And if you see it slightly different than me, that's fine too. Paint it the way you see it. Just remember though, my only rule is don't paint better than me. I'm sensitive about paint. No, I want you to paint better than me. That means I taught you well. I showed you something. You know, it's great. And so we'll pull down just a bit here. Catch that side plane of his face a bit more. Not as light as his nose. And we could have it a bit wider right in through here. A bit lighter. I'm looking right through here, see? And I'm a little dark, so I'm going to lighten up. Pull through once. Here, this is widening and lightening his nose. Let's get it a little bit lighter yet. And pull through. There. Some of that can come down here. Leave a little space there for grays, shadows, curving down just a bit. There. That's good. This, now that that's light, this could be a bit lighter. There. That particular tone. As I'm going to go to a little medium white and some gray here. Slightly softer and just push a bit of that right in here. So it's not quite as light as what I was just using up there. And see, just a real light touch, kind of skipping a bit, will get you some of that lights. And especially for me on the 10, I really know the 10. I do a lot of painting with the size 10. It's kind of like my brush. I'm going to lighten this just a bit. Kind of like my brush. And I like that. There we go. And so, yeah, there's a bit more softer gray light. I'm going to add some open medium to this, basically because I want to sneak up into this tone, a little bit transparent, right up into this eye here. And see if I get the flow of that color coming off of this eye better. Pulling down slightly, around, like that, build up around that eye a bit. You can see that, right? You can see a little more light right there. Do you see that? Just a tiny bit. Maybe we can just hit it a little bit there. But you could do a small brush and go in there and work that, you know. But I just love the power of the big brush. I love that power. And that's my choice. Push a little more light. There. Just like that. A little bit pulling down, curving in towards the eye, just slightly. There we go. And I could have some more of that dragged light, kind of just little highlights hitting the fur up here. Like that. And I don't really like that transition area in there, and that's just yellow. And let's actually make that mid-tone gray, blue, and burnt sienna. Wipe that just a little bit in our brush and see if we can get that. See, it goes down towards his eye to that dark mark that I put in here earlier above his eye, and then just kind of painted it away. And that's one of the things that gives his expression, is this little, I'm just going to use the corner of this brush, and let's get that mark just a bit darker. So a bit of blue, burnt sienna, a little bit darker. Sneak up on it here. And a little bit darker up above the eye. There we go. It's a little closer. A little bit of that softer, and it's just get it a little closer. You don't have to get it perfect, just a little closer. There, let's drag that up and around here to give a little better look to that side over there. It's mostly dark over there, but we'll just grab a bit of it here. Just pull that around. That's good. But I need a bit more of that gray, up and down, pulling down towards his face here, which gives the downward motion here to his head, or the down rounding the part of his forehead coming down. So I've got to reestablish that again. Here, a little bit of that dark mark right up here, which helps that divide line of his fur there. And then the down this way, pulling down some of that dark. Might have to just reset that again. But you go back dark, go back light, and see, it's got to build that forehead right in there. And if you want to, some of you might just say, well, that's good enough. That really looks like a wolf. That's good enough. Some of you might want to spend a few more hours on it. So it's your painting. Do what you like. Here. There we go. Just capture. I just like this. Just a slightly, I want that different tone right there. Slightly yellow, warmer. Just a bit. Right in there. Yeah. See, that just gets a different tone right up there by his eye. I know it's a little thing, and it's a little different, but I like that. I'm going to take that warmer tone right up in here by his ear. Okay. Now, let's leave that, and I'm going to go to a small, just a small little, this is a number 2 filbert, and I use this quite a bit around the eye. I'm going to take some super dark, which is our violet, red, green, maybe some red here, just real dark grade, and my painting stick here. And we're going to come in and just carefully work some of that shadow, open up the eye just a bit. This is the expression that he's going to have. We'll take a bit of that dark, work that across here. Right up in there. So we're going to try to get a little closer to his expression. I'm looking where the darks are, how much dark I have on there. Like he has a bigger, wider little mark of it right down through here, underneath here. right down in there. See, it changes his look, his expression. And let's take this, thin this out till it's just like a real thin wash of it. And we'll wash just ever so lightly over his eye and push that back just a bit. Now that's closer to his eye here. I took a little too much off. And he doesn't really have a, a catch light. So many times I paint the catch lights on him. He doesn't really have one in here. So, that's up to you. Do you want to put it? But see, he's got a little, I know it's hard to see, but there's a little burnt sienna in there. That's just wonderful. I'm going to enhance that just a bit. A little bit of burnt sienna. And then slightly warmer yellow. And a little bit of that gray. Little touches that I put in here of these tones around the eye is really what makes a beautiful animal painting, is taking the time to kind of set some of those in. And that really makes a nice painting. You see, let's see where we are on this. Hour and 35 minutes. That's not too bad for this little painting so far. We got a ways to go, but not too bad. I'll show you guys a few more little things, but I'll soften that. Now see that little half tone of dark that comes out of the eye and rounds down. I don't have it on this one. And so that makes it a harsher little line over here. I just need a little bit of it. And usually I'll put that on and then I'll have to reset the dark. And see, that gets a little closer to his eye. So you look for the positions of those little tones there. See? And up here could be the shadow. This is really the shadow of his upper lid. It's called the lid shadow. The upper lid shadow is a little wider right there. We'll push that down just a bit there on that. And so you can see you could do quite a bit. There is so how much you're going to do. How much you're going to do over on that other eye. He's pretty dark over there. Matter of fact, I have him a little bit lighter still than what he is. I could just darken that down a bit more. The thing is, I do like that slight lighter and maybe a bit darker over here underneath. I do like that little bit of his light eye right in there. I do like that, just popping that eye out. So I just might leave that. It's a little different. But on that one over there, you see it. See, you can see it over there on that one a lot better. There's so I could, before I go back and start finishing some of the other areas, could take a bit of that light yellows and the medium white and white, and pull that lighter mark right down through there, and a little touch in here, just a little bit. Let's widen that back up just a touch right up in there. So that's it. See, mine is a little bit different shape right up here than his. It's a little wider, lighter right out here. Those are little things that will change his expression and stuff. So that's helping right there. But his is still just almost a round circle. Mine's still a little bit too much oval. But you know what? Sometimes you just let that stuff go. I'll just put a little dark right down there, and that'll work there like that. Not too bad. But it's suddenly his expression is this line here that I notice all the time. Some of the cows that I paint have this. There's a light line coming down, right down through here, that helps turn the edge of the eye, and it changes his expression slightly. It's just a little thing, but it is a big thing. And it's little things that you learn, after a few years of doing them, what marks really change the look of the animal, And you could tap in like a little catch light or a little, what we call a wet wet eye look by putting just a tiny little bit of light in there. You see, you don't see it here, but you do when you look at that photo there. You see it. Here, let me show you here. See? You see that little bit of light right there, and you see a little light right there, but you see that's the wet look to the eye. And you don't see it into the color photo, and that's one reason why, one of the wonderful reasons why I like to do that black and white. So, and then it's up to me whether or not I put that little light in there. Catch that, and you can barely see it. Matter of fact, maybe you can't see it, but it looks amazing. Looks absolutely amazing. You got to have fun at this stuff, guys. You got to have fun, because it is fun, and it's frustrating too when you're a beginner to get some of this stuff. You know what you want to do, but it's just a slow progression that I work here as I get these elements in and stuff. And then it's the determination of how much, there's a lot of times onto a painting I might let a lot of these other areas go. Or I might come through now and with some softening and stuff to soften some. Maybe I got him a little bit too much and I might want to soften, or I want to build a bit more. I really like the textures and stuff up in these kinds of areas. Start first there with some white, medium white, and finish off with some more white here. And pull some of that down. Put some of those marks in for his whiskers, and a few little marks here for the edge of his mouth and stuff. And we'll get some more of the light and shadow here onto him. Let me go back to my 10, my favorite 10 here. And we'll put some of those warmer little gray. So a beautiful mid-tone warm gray is the little bit of yellow, burnt sienna, and that blue. But I like that bit of yellow in there, in the blue. Causes it to go a real soft, kind of greenish gray. You can even add a touch of green. Make different ones. That's the color right there. And we'll just come up along the edge here and push some of that in. Now, see, and then this is the thing. This is, okay, first let me put this light on. I get so excited because some of that stuff looks really great. Looks like you know what you're doing. And let's push some of this light on here for a second. Okay? And so I'll push that on and start to get that look right in there like that, right? So, and it lifts his head, does everything it wants. But then you would take some of that color that you made there, step off to the side, add some blue to it, and then you would touch that blue. And this is what makes it a portrait, is when you do some of these other colors like this, like that blue, that little bit of blue right there is what takes all of this warmth and kicks a contrast right over there, which is fantastic. Let's put a little open medium in some of this. Let's come back right up through here. Right up there like that. Let's take a little bit of medium white and some gray. A little bit more gray. And work some of that right in there. That's kind of a pretty little color. Look for that. Now, I've got this color. It's real wispy like onto the pattern stuff, but his eye over here is wider. His right up in this area is wider than what it really needs to be. So I'll probably take that out with some of the background and stuff. But until that time, sometimes so I don't forget, this is what I do. I'll take some water right in here and I'll just pull through several times, taking off, pushing back, right back that area there. So I know I have to work that area and thin that out. Or you can come back in and say, okay, I'm going to set some of that. Let's just do some of that. Let's just set some of that warm, a little bit of blue, a little bit of green. Beautiful, cooler dark right in there. That we may want to have, we'll just drift that right into him a bit there. And I love that color coming off of there like that. And we're probably going to want that a bigger mark. Let's go to our, and let's thin that for a second. Let's go to our bigger brush, 1-inch brush. Here. Right like that. And, you know, there was the hardest time for me when I was starting to do this to figure out how am I going to do these strokes, you know, to the outside and stuff like that here. How do I do this? How do these artists know how to do this without really destroying something? And it took a while for me to figure out, but most of it was a confidence, just to get a confidence, just to do it. And you go, wow, hey, that looks kind of cool. But you know, it's a confidence to do it. And you know, I've said to you many times, those of you that study with me all the time, you heard me say it many times on a portrait, and when I'm painting and stuff, there was I watched this one guy, he said, it is so much better to take a confident stroke that is wrong than to sit there and fuss around with a stroke or a mark and make it perfect, because then you just make it stiff. And that is so very true. And so I have learned over time that, you know, I just go for it and I put those marks on and you know, I just let it happen here. And so we'll push a little bit of this in and out here. And some of those marks, we'll push some of that in, and we'll maybe right out here, we'll pull this longer kind of curved one in and out there. Soften it a bit. There. Leave that blue in there, I like that. But, you know, his comes up a little bit higher up there towards the nose, so we'll push just a bit. And maybe just a bit of this eye here, so the width of that comes in towards his eye. And just a tiny little marks, just to show the end of his fur over there on that side. Just let it fade away up over in there. It's not needed, I don't think. Don't think it's needed. Now we can go up a little bit lighter up here. And right down through here. There we go. And a little bit more of the dark. So now what I'm going to do is just come out through the rest of the painting here and using mostly my 10 and work through some of these other colors and tones again here. Other colors and tones through this area here again, and kind of build those up one more time. Trying not to do too much. I want a few little marks of dark, like, see how powerful that little mark is there? And I compare that up against his eye, and, you know, there was a time that I would worry about, you know, did I just destroy it? But I like it more now when I leave these marks. Just do little marks like that and leave those and capture that feeling a little bit better. So I'm just going to add a few more little things there. And then we'll come back and take a final little look on it, okay? So I'm just going to step back. I'm going to actually go get myself a cup of coffee here. It's been an hour and 48 minutes without coffee. That's terrible. Okay? And then we'll come back. I'll add a few little things and we'll talk about finishing it up, okay? Hope you've enjoyed it so far. We're almost done. See you in a minute. Hi, everyone. Took a nice little break there. Now, when I was looking at that, I think I want to bring that dark, kind of like in a line right up here. You know, he has that dark there and a few little whispery hairs there, which might be kind of neat to pull out. So I'm going to take some of the dark. This is my 1-inch brush, some of my blue and the burnt sienna here. And let's just capture some real quick. Let me add a little open medium to this, get a touch of transparency here. Some darks coming up like this, just kind of letting that go through. And then I'm going to take my paper towel and pull through, shortening some of them. But I'm going to let some of that blue stay in there as a real nice little dark there as well. And maybe pull, I did like some of that. Even though this is the light side, we'll leave a few little marks right over here as well. And we can soften some of that look. And again, you're constantly relating it back here. I love that little blue. Constantly relating it back up here to what it looks like into his face. And that's not too bad. I'm going to go to my 3/4 inch brush. I really like that when I go to stroke this. I'm going to take some medium white and some gray, maybe a bit of this so it softens it down a bit, and some open medium here. And let's just lightly say, and right down into some of that. And see, you can use your, while that's wet like that, you can use your paper towel to kind of vary the marks and put a few little bits of things going on there, just pull down. Or you can take a liner brush and add a few little marks there too. I want to get a couple of strokes of some warmer gray, burnt sienna and our mid-tone gray, of the burnt sienna and the sapphire blue. A few little marks of that through. I do like that blue, and I removed some of that blue over here in that painting, so I may want to just hit a few little areas of that again here. Just little ideas of that. Little touches of the blue, just add that spark. And let's pull some of that out, get that feeling here that he has. I'm not going to try to copy his fur all exact, but I'm just going to capture some of that feeling there. And of course his leg comes right in here. That's this one, which I'm not going to define very much. I'm just maybe a little bit more than what I have there. Lighten up a bit. There. Just a little bit light, and then maybe an idea of it here. I want to keep it simple. Simple shapes. Good old Monet always said, like I've told you so many times, just don't take away the imagination. Don't paint it so much that you take away the imagination of the viewer. So I always try to remember that. So a few little light hits here. Just see how I'm using the corner of my brush, so it's a different kind of mark, or I can use the flat to give a different look. And that's one thing I like to do. And you can play that as much as you want. Now, before I go do this edge over here, and I got to do some up into the ear, I'm going to probably add even some of that soft green, burnt sienna green that I like. I'm going to add some open medium, maybe a little bit of extender here. See what that bit of that green looks like in here. It's a nice bit of a color. There's a difference for him, and I might even just whisper a bit of that back up over here like that, because it's a good, it puts him into the wild a bit here. There, like that. Just something just to take the eye out a bit here. You don't want to get wild and crazy here, Dave. You just take the eye out a bit. And, that's what I love about painting alla prima like this. And just having some fun with some of this, these marks here. You look at it as, is it distracting from it? Is it taken away? He's got a heavier little mark of it, like right down here. Do you want to, push that in and define, or his edge there a bit, or do you want him to disappear a bit? Try some different things, and because you can always take it back out, but try some different things and see what you want to do with him. Now that I have that, I do like that, and I'm going to take some of my light and just whisper that edge of him there. Pull this edge out here, let that hit a bit of the green, pull that in and out of the green a bit, and it will take the color in and out, soften it a bit. Let that happen. It's a traveling of an edge in and out, your edge of your colors. Those of you that are the beginners, you'll hear me say that so many times, traveling the edge, watching the edge of your color. And edges are so important. As you're watching the videos, I want you to listen when I start to talk about the edges. Here, we'll just put up a little more light because I want to build just a bit more of a light dark situation on him here. And maybe so it goes light dark in there too soon, and I knew that was going to happen. So I'm just going to take some yellow, some blue, some burnt siennas here, make that half tone in there, and pull some of that down. I just love those colors in there. That just looks so great. And could have a bit more burnt sienna in there. Well, that isn't going to do it. Let's go burnt sienna and a little bit of blue. Find a kind of a cleaner area here, right? And here we go. And so it's kind of like, how are you going to build him perfectly here, or are you going to let some of this? And I just want this. I think, it's an idea of him, and I'm not going to worry about getting it absolutely perfect to what is showing on him. But I do like these little marks of color like that. I do like that little bit of grayness there to that. Now, you could have it softer if you want. That's up to you. There's many times where I've taken it and I've softened it. Like I've taken some of these lights, and they, especially like these grays, let's thin this out. And you can, if you want to soften the background a bit so that it works, those colors work into him a bit, put a bit of that gray out here into the background, which will start to soften some of those colors a bit. And those color exchanges there. And but that's up to you. How much do you want to? How much contrast do you want to have here? To your painting. And I like to, when I start to judge it like this, I like to do thin washes like this until I start to see him just a bit more. Him popping off just a bit more, and yeah, that's good. Just there we go. Just work those edges just a bit. I think pull in. That's just a little too outlined right in there. I think I will pull in just a bit some of those colors. Here, a little softer. Here we go. Just like that. I do like the touches of the green. And good contemporary painters would just give it a dose of green, which is really kind of neat, and maybe a touch of that burnt sienna in there. I mean, that is very contemporary to do that, and that does look kind of neat. Let's push a bit of that green there, just a touch of that burnt sienna with that there. That's kind of neat. Here. There we go. Yeah, now let's go back up here with our small brush, or our number 10, my favorite. Take a little bit of the yellow and grays and stuff, and we'll push a bit more of those right up here into this corner of him. Just a touch around. You know, that burnt sienna and green is also a real pretty gray color that can appear on him as well, and kind of pull some of it together here. There we go. Maybe right up in here. There we go. And a bit of the darker colors, a little bit of the blue and black here, just to say some shape. Just boom, boom, boom. Little, use the chisel of your brush corners, get some different colors. I'm going to let some of this fade away out here, right back here. Just let that whole side kind of fade away, bringing his eye and bringing part of him further forward here, this part of it forward here. But that's a personal choice here. Let's just push that in. Softer little gray right here to, you know, and how much you define, that's what's gonna kind of be up to you. How much you define. I can go a little lighter right here, which is that edge there of. So that's up to you. So you know, little details like that, and how much you do, that's kind of up to you. We'll put a few little marks for the edge of his hair there, a few little marks. There's that nice one I captured there. That's still pretty good. A little softer here. A little bit here. Yeah, that's kind of neat. And yeah, I might want just a touch of a lighter yellow. Sunlit kind of color hitting right in there. I like that. Just little touches of that. Little sunshine. And I've got just a few little areas that, you know, need to be kind of like touched into his nose. So I want to fix that up just a bit there. And, you know, and then it's kind of be deciding here. I'm not real sure on this, but, you know, this is all the final little playing stuff. Sometimes, you know, it's good to, you know, I like to paint it as much as I can in one day. That's the feeling of the alla prima. But there's no rush into it that you need to do that. You can come back. But, you know, a lot of times I have found that when I come back, I start to second guess myself all the time. And so I might do something that really messes it up. So it's best for me to get it done in the one day if I can. I have found over time, just adding some little tiny darks to it. So, and you can see he's a little bit lighter, like right down in there than I have. And I think I will do that because that pulls that light back up. And, you know, but sometimes, you know, like when I'm painting here, I won't see, I'll get so wrapped up in one area, you don't see it, something that you're missing. And some of you right now may be saying, hey, Dave, why don't you put a little bit over there? You know, I don't see it maybe right now. I'll see it in a little bit, you know, or I might see it tomorrow morning. Hopefully I'll see it before I varnish it, you know. But that's perfectly normal. You don't be afraid that you can't come back and change something. But I try not to make any big changes because that is what will screw up your painting. If you try to go in and do big changes, because tomorrow you're a different artist, and you go in and try to make big changes, and you're a different artist, you have a different feeling, and so it will make everything feel different, look different, and you can really sometimes mess up a painting by doing that. So there is something to be said, the age-old tradition of painting all a primo in one setting and leaving it alone. Just going to widen some of this out a bit. Right in there. That's just a little too wide, but this is what I love to do, is to play these tones back and forth and get some of these variations and differences. This could be a little warmer. See, you get that little difference of that tone. That's what makes that so pretty. And you can push it around a bit to get a little incorporation of the colors, a little bit. I've almost captured that. It's just got a little different movement, but I think mine's okay. So just a few little areas of tiny bit of light, and I think I'm going to call it, I could tiny bit more light right in there, bringing that part of it back up. That light is pretty good. Could have a little straighter line with that right in there. It's pretty good. Now I could also, which I probably should, just indicate here, corner of the brush, his little whisker lines. There. And you can put whiskers on or whatever, and you can take a soft light just in your brush and blur out just a touch there, or tap in some more light in and around there. So we could bring some of that light back down here. There we go. Just right there. That's not too bad for him. Just little touches. And he will dry slightly darker, so you might have to come back and just touch in a few areas, but not many. Not many at all. So there you go. Just a little over 2 hours here painting him. Not bad for a little, for the little, he's a prairie wolf, which there aren't many of them left, and they say he's a subspecies of the gray wolf. A lot of them, timber wolves, gray wolves, subspecies of them. I think I'll just pull a bit more of that light right down here. And, so he's a fun little subject, though. He's really kind of gentle looking, but they're not really very gentle looking. Very gentle looking, but not very gentle looking animals here. But fun to paint. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm just going to add a bit more here. Right down like that. I love painting this area of any kind of the animals. Just getting the flow and the feeling of the fur here and stuff is just a lot of fun to paint. And so you work back and forth. You can add some open medium, and it basically, like I said, it's a touch, a push, and lift off both directions. So I touch, push, lift off in both directions, and it really starts to just set the flow of the fur in there. And yeah, that works pretty good. I could maybe put a little softer. And you just, you get to a point where you just don't want to stop painting because it's just so much fun on them. Here. There we go. There, we'll pull that bit. Just, sometimes just using that paper towel and pulling through just gives you the look really that you want to have. But yeah, I think that's what I want. I'm not going to build his chest up and build his. I might just take one more little light stroke right here. And we just call that maybe one more right here. Then we'll call it just boom right there. There we go. And we'll leave it at that, just the unknown. Fun little work. I could have, you just don't want to stop. I could have just a touch more right in here. Take that back out. I took that out. That softness of the fur on that side. Just a little movement right in there. Don't take out that blue. I kind of like that. Little touches of those blues are really nice. But, yep. That's pretty good for him, I think, okay? I hope you enjoyed it, kind of working through that a little bit slow, working through some of the things. And take a look at that. So those of you that are in the membership, I'll put some of these photos, all my reference photos, a final photo of the one I painted here, put them all together, and so you can have some to paint from. And, take a look. This does come out a little bit further. Yeah, I'll fix it. But take a look at that one there, because it really does help you see where those, especially those lower shines and stuff, that can really help you, where that wet part of the eye is and stuff, that can really help you add just that extra little spark. So the colors photo doesn't always show it, okay? But those are great ways to do it. But yeah, that's pretty neat for him, I think. And hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time. And like I said, I'll put all the lists of everything I do into the video descriptions. Please hit like and share the video and help us promote our channel. We really appreciate that. And click that little bell so that you know exactly when we have new videos and stuff like that coming. And I promised you that we were going to start those some animal portraiture, the challenge to it, and do some real quick ones along that way. We're going to do that. I'm going to almost double the videos that I'm doing each week here through the next month or so, as we get some of that stuff done, so we can keep some of the other videos going as well. But lots of fun, okay? Thanks very much, guys. And if you have any comments or questions or anything, just write them down below and I'll try to get to them, okay? Thanks a lot, and I'll see you on the next one.